What's up guys, Foxen here. Oh yes, this episode you're getting a young Historia. Little Historia already looks super adorable in the manga, and now even more so in the anime. Oh, so innocent back then, this little blonde. But unfortunately she was born in the Attack on Titan world. This episode you got a full taste of what Historia went through in the past, which really involves that wonderful mother of hers. But really, I can't even joke about that too much. The award for the worst mother in history has to go to Historia's mother. Congratulations. I mean, she wasn't subtle at all about not wanting Historia. She was pretty open about how she just wanted her to die. And talking about dying, literally her mother's dying words were also resentment towards her. If only Historia wasn't ever born. Of course, the bloody cherry on top was getting that front row seat to her mother's death. Poor little blonde girl. No wonder Historia has been screwed over in the head and so confused now. It really is interesting to see how Historia originally thought of her mother being this beautiful lady. Couldn't be further from the truth. Now for Historia's father. Back then, a decade ago, Historia was also supposed to die on that day. But it seems that Historia got spared in the last moment. Oh, such a merciful father. He hadn't been there for all of your life, but at least he didn't kill you. But really, this wasn't Rod being merciful at all. He was really just being a selfish bastard. Oh, this extra child has royal blood? Let's go ahead and save that for later. Next up, let's not forget about Kenny in the past this episode. Originally, this whole flashback scene should have been your first introduction to Kenny. Of course, the anime completely changed that. Right here, it is interesting to see this younger Kenny in the flashback, although not as young as the one you see in the opening. At this point in the story, Kenny was part of Rod's loyal team. Notice how Kenny's formality towards Rod just speaks volumes about him and his character. How much of this was fake, and how much was real? I do wonder how Kenny's relationship with Roz had progressed over the years. Or actually decades between this event and the present day in the anime. Also, what was that about Kenny giving no dams about murdering a little kid? So savage. This may explain how Levi is how he is today. Anyway, this episode, we're getting a return of Pixies. I'm really glad to see this old drunk back, especially with the current events and mess happening in the manga. I do wonder if they're gonna add any new drinking scenes for Pixies this season. There's quite a few opportunities. But more important in this episode was his conversation with Erwin. The most juiciest parts of this episode came from him. First off, Commander Erwin puts his grand master plan on the table this episode. Unsurprisingly, it turns out that the royal government is super corrupt. Time to trade out the old ruling power for the new queen. In this case, that's gonna be Historia. So, pretty simple plan. That should go very smoothly. It is nice to see that it wasn't too hard to get Pixies on his side. As for Commander Badass's past and his driving motivation, this episode you get to find out about Erwin's father. Erwin's father used to be this teacher until young Erwin got too smart for his own good. Perhaps not smart enough not to talk about this in public. Although who could blame him? Erwin was really only curious. But eventually his curiosity got his father into a little bit of trouble with the government. One day he just happened to have gotten into an accident. This right here would have definitely made anyone suspicious for life. You guys definitely messed with the wrong person. And now Commander. Although do notice this, someone just happened to be curious in the past about Titans, asked around some questions, but some high-ranking people obviously did not like that, and hence suppressed it. This makes you wonder just how many other countless teachers and curious individuals got killed over the decades. When you start getting close to the truth or the edges around it, you suddenly find yourself taken out by Kenny, or if you're unlucky, tortured by Sanis. This really makes you question now just how much of the history books are propaganda. The best way to control a population has always been to control information first. Or so I hear. By the way, did anyone catch the young Sanis asking young Erwin a question here? Recall from the previous episode too, one of Sanis' flashback was actually of him and Erwin's father. Poor guy must have gotten tortured to death. Next up, let's talk about the second huge reveal, this one actually involving Hanji. So you got Hanji spilling or revealing the secrets of the Titans to the other Survey Corps members. And of course to the audience too. Turns out that a Titan can revert back to being human if only they eat a Titan shifter. So in case you missed it, Hanji put it all together out there for you this episode. Recall them mentioning something about Eren being eaten last episode? That's right, it's time to start barbecuing some juicy Eren meat. Who wants some Eren sausages or steaks? Let me mention that the pieces of all of this have been dropped in Season 2. I actually just got done with watching Attack on Titan Season 2 again. From that season, you get a lot of hints about this from Ymir's conversation to the others, along with their flashback. All of this should make you wonder about Ymir and especially Eren's Titan abilities. Oh, and in case that wasn't clear enough, you also got this mid-info card with the juicy details. Gotta say, I'm really liking the Titan art they made for this. Loving how they're adding more Titans to this arc, including the Beast Titan via this Titan art. Anyway, I'm curious, so let me know, what do you think about this Titan power transfer? If you're anime only, did you catch this back in Season 2? Honestly, I totally missed it when I was watching Season 2 when I was anime only. And I'm sure my roommates that I watch anime with missed it for sure too. Anyway, more from Erwin this episode. Naturally, the Survey Corps commander was gonna get the blame for all of this mess. Poor Reeves, they're so freaking corrupt. And now poor Erwin too. He's already taken so much crap throughout his entire life. This has only continued with his time as Survey Corps commander. It wasn't even that long ago that he became this Titan chew toy. And now he's being framed for murder? Great life right there. By the way, even more props to Erwin. You have Mr. Badass's speech this episode. Massive respect right there. Let's see if Erwin gets a chance to bounce back from this. As for 50 Shades of Hanji this episode. So you got Hanji that tricked Sanus, then she threw his buddy into the lion cage. I gotta love how this whole situation played out. Sanus, you were totally played. Although I do have to point out this little commentary here. From Sanus, he mentions how the world is always gonna have people like them. Hanji and now Levi have done their own torturing. Let's see if they could keep on walking this fine line and not cross into what Sanus has become. By the way, another small thing to notice about Sanus. By now, you may have seen my video covering the cuts and changes for the previous episode 2. The torture scene involving Sanus was heavily censored or toned down compared to the manga. However, notice how Sanus is still missing a tooth here. That's despite the fact that you never saw Dentist Hanji in the anime. So, any possible upgrades coming for the Blu-ray release? I wonder. As for Levi this episode, you got Levi and the Survey Corps retreating into the forest, or woods. But get this, Levi has become even more famous now, although not in a good way. Just take a look at that wanted poster. That picture looks god-awful. I guess the camera does add 20 pounds. He almost looks like fricking Rod right there. Perhaps this is an unfortunate blessing since they are on the run. I also like how there's only a picture for Levi, since the other scouts are way bottom on the totem pole. You guys don't even have a picture of Hanji? Talk about being incompetent. I guess that's just one of the advantages of living in the dark ages, before the interwebs. As for another fun Hanji moment, Hanji's super kick. Even Levi to the side was like, what the hell? My interns just got done cleaning those. Either way, I was especially waiting for this moment. I'm definitely becoming more of a fan of crazy Hanji. By the way, about Hanji's promotion to Survey Corps Commander, was that really the best idea? I could just imagine the things Hanji would make the scouts do. Although to be fair, there's not that many options. Hanji now has to officially take the charge now that Erwin's been blamed for murder. Really quickly, did you guys notice Kenny creeping in the background in that rot scene? I actually thought Kenny was cut out of this shot in the previous episode. But nope, Kenny's delivery comes with that high quality service. As for poor Eren this episode, while so much stuff is happening around him, Eren this episode looks so miserable. He's like a sack of potatoes off to the side right there, just getting picked up and carried from place to place. The only bright side to this is that Eren is getting some information from this. So Ron, please keep on dropping more knowledge. One other thing I do want to touch on about this episode is the pacing. Season 3 started with episode 1 that went from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. That's now been heavily slowed down. Practically all of this episode was spent covering stuff that was previously skipped. This included Erwin's talk with Pixies, young Erwin and his father's history, and of course Historia's past. This episode actually didn't go anywhere further in the manga compared to what was covered in the previous episode. I could already tell this episode had the least changes compared to episode 1 and 2. So let me know, how are you liking or disliking this slowdown pace for the anime? It's just interesting to see how they sped with episode 1 to jump into the middle of the Uprising arc story as soon as possible. Right now, they not only slow down, but they're circling back. I do wonder if this is going to be a negative for most people or a good chunk of people. Was this change of pace this episode a negative for some of you? From the preview, it looks like it may slow down even more, but we'll see next week. But anyway, let me get your thoughts on this episode overall. What do you think about young Historia's backstory? How amazing was that mother of hers? And how about the history of Commander Eyebrows' father? What is something that corrupt trying to really hide? Also, don't forget about the major reveal here regarding Titans and Eren. Would you prefer a bacon-wrapped Eren or a deep-fried barbecued Eren? Anyway, definitely give a colossal thumbs up and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, I put out 5+ anime videos here every week. Check out my recent video going over all the changes for episode 2. I'll be working on a changes video for this episode soon. If you want to find out more about Kenny, don't miss my video covering everything about this friendly fellow. Be sure to set up that bell icon, and I'll see you guys later.